Like our content? It's funded by viewers like you. Please consider becoming a sustaining supporter of New Church Live today.
Hey everybody, welcome to New Church Live. My name is Curtis Childs. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to begin, the talk today is called The Ultimate Power Couple, the way your life changes when your heart and mind are in sync. And I want to begin today by playing a game that's called Are You Happy? This is an easy game that you can play, and maybe you can even win if you answer it correctly. And all you have to do is I'm going to give you a scenario that you could be in, and you have to tell me if you're happy during that scenario. Okay, and we're going to play 2 times with 2 different scenarios. In scenario A, you are going to start with $28,000 in cash, but you have to spend it on a luxury vacation to Bora Bora, which is in the, where is it, like Polynesia? Okay, it's like, Bora Bora is the island. I've never been there, don't worry. It's the island that people say, like, oh, that's the fanciest island in the world. So let's say you're going to go there, and you get to fly there, and you have your significant other with you, and you touch down, and the weather is perfect, and they take you to your overwater bungalow, and I don't know, you see like a stingray jump out of the water. It's really great. But as you're heading to dinner, and this is like the more you've ever been in close contact with another human being, the more you can understand this. Let's say that somebody says something or does something that just starts to get you guys a little bit snippy at each other. And somebody snipes a little here or there, and suddenly you're in a fight. And the waiter sits you down, and you're at a table, and you're looking out over the ocean, and neither one of you is talking to each other. Somebody's looking at their phone, the other person's looking out over the water. Would you be happy in that scenario? No, because the fight takes precedence over everything. It wouldn't matter, like, could you spend an extra $10,000 on that night and make it happy? No. And then it just becomes, oh, we wasted all this money on this trip, and now we're just fighting during it. If the couple's getting along, or if the couple's not getting along, that takes precedence over everything. There's a bunch of dynamics. I'm not saying it's not great to be in Bora Bora, but I'm saying nothing else will fix it if we're fighting. Okay, scenario. So, who are you happy? You can answer at home. You can type it in the comments. Are you happy in scenario A? Scenario B. So scenario A was you fly to Bora Bora and go and have that vacation, but you're fighting. Scenario B, again, you're with your dear loved one, and you're driving to a humble vacation in a crowded town, a couple blocks back from the ocean. Your check engine light goes on, and it turns out it's really something, and you have to stop over in this little town on the side of a semi-divided highway, and you have to just rent, with the last of your vacation money, a cheap motel. But you're both laughing about it. You're getting along, you're proud of each other for how you're handling the situation, you support each other, you're sitting on the little balcony that faces the parking lot, and you're thinking about funny other things that have happened in your relationship. Are you happy then? You're happy in a way that people wish they could have. And it's because, while the surroundings don't mean everything, they have a huge impact. The dynamic of whether or not a couple is getting along absolutely changes the way both of you experience your lives and the world around you. Okay? That's the lesson of the who is happy game. Now, this is not a talk about relationships or advice on how to have a good marriage or something. what I want to do is take that dynamic and apply it to somewhere where you might not have thought about it, which is inside of you. That you have a couple in you that if they're getting along, it has an impact on your life. And if they're not getting along, it has an impact on your life. And this is something that maybe you never thought about before, but can absolutely set the tone for whether or not you can be in a state of heaven where you're happy and peaceful, or a state outside heaven where you're upset and anxious and paying this sort of unhappiness argument tax in your life. So it might seem strange at first, but come with me as we talk about the things in you like they are a couple that we want to have. Like we're the couples therapist for our own heart and mind. The way that I want to label these two partners in you, they're not really newlyweds because you have them for your whole life, but this long-standing couple who we want to get them to renew their vows, it's your will and your intellect. So the will in you is, you could call it the love cluster. These are the things that you want. These are the things that you enjoy, the things that you aim toward, that you care about. So basically the feeling stuff, the feeling and desire stuff in you. You have a whole set of those. That's one partner. The other partner is the intellect, which is the information cluster. You might have thought, well, that's everything. You just described everything about me, like what I want, what I aim for. But there's a whole other side. There's what you know. The intellect is everything that you know. What you believe, which is a little different than what you know. This is out of all that sea of facts and things you've accumulated and everything that you've seen when you're scrolling your phone. We're going to come back to scrolling the phone in just a minute. The things you believe are things you selected as these ones matter. These ones are true. So the intellect is not just the things you know, but the things that you believe, the things that you see as true, that you deem as worthy to aspire to. So that's our happy couple. Your will and your intellect, your feelings and goals, and then your meaning-making system. It's funny that Jesus seems to talk about these two things. And when he's asked, like, how do you follow me? He'll often, if not always, talk about how there's these two sides of you. Maybe most famously in the Great Commandment, where somebody says, what's the greatest commandment of all? You've probably heard it before. If you haven't, you're going to hear a great commandment. I mean, literally, but also it's an excellent commandment. And listen to the components. You love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. I know last week in New Church Live, we talked about the soul. I want to focus here on how he says heart and mind. Isn't that a little... Why does Jesus need to bring those up? Isn't that a little bit? You could just say, just love God. It's different. Loving with your heart is different than loving with your mind. And notice that they're both needing to converge on the same thing. So love God. Use both things, your heart and your mind, to do the same thing, to love God. He could have left one out, but he didn't. Maybe there's relevant information in there. So the way that we're to understand that commandment is like, okay, there's something you do with what you know, and there's something you do with what you love. And it's not just there. There's often this importance placed on the integration of information and then will. There's famously, the story of the person who builds their house on the sand. When I was little, There was a song in church that like, don't build your house on the sandy land. Yeah. Anyone? No. Okay. I feel like they tried to put in my contract that I'm not allowed to sing during this, but I got my lawyers together and we got a loophole, so now I can sing that song. The story, if you're not familiar, is Jesus talks about how there is a person who builds a house, and there's a wise person and a foolish person, and they both build the house, but what they build it on is different. The wise person builds the house with a foundation of rock. So then when the rains come and the floods beat against the house stands. Second person builds the same house, but it's on sand. And so the rains come and the floods beat against it, and it falls, and then it says, and great was its fall. And you know what the difference between those two people is? It's not actually a story about bedrock and geological anchoring of your dwelling place. He says that the person who hears these words of mine and acts on them is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The person who does not hears them but does not act on them is like the foolish person who built it on sand. So even there, you have the intellect is what hears that. The intellect is what can take something like the words of Jesus and understand it and know, when he says love one another, I know what that means. I understand that. I can apply it to situations of love that I've had from my life. Okay, I get that. But there's another side to it. There is, are you going to go do that? And unless those two things are acting together, unless there is this healthy, high communication, shared purpose marriage between those two parts of you, when times get tough, the house is going to fall over. And as we're going to look at in the next section, the reason why we are like we are, the reason why you can think and feel and separate the two or join the two, is that this is a reflection of how God is and how love and wisdom themselves are. And that's what we're going to look at in the next section. And then in the third section, I'm going to show you how modern psychology is actually pointing to this exact same finding and can help expand our understanding of what it is to love God with your whole heart and with your whole mind.
What will go wrong will go wrong, and what will go right will go right. Push comes a shove, it's all about love. The sight of your smile fills my heart with light. The days when tedium rules, others when you wish that were so. Push comes to shove, it's all about love. So it would seem, it's the great to and fro. I could sail what's left of the seven seas. I could swim with the bears where the ice used to be. I could look in the mirror, blow myself a kiss. Reality calls, and it comes down to this. The place that you hold in my life is the axis it all spins around. Push comes a shove, it's all about love. Ring of your laugh is the sweetest of sound. I could sail what's left of the seven seas. I could swim with the bears where the ice used to be. I could look in the mirror, blow myself a kiss, but reality calls, and it comes down to this: the place that you hold in my life is the axis it all spins around. Push comes a shove, it's all about love. The ring of your laugh is the sweetest of sound.
Beautiful. Getting along is an art form. That's why you could have songs like that, which is like, remember, it's about love. I love that line, seeing your smile lights me up, or something close to that. That is the act of, oh yeah, right, there's somebody there, and I'm getting an indication that they're happy, and we're working. It's not just an easy thing, you just fall into it. And it helps to know that there's a relationship there that you got to try to do. So that's why it's so important that we understand there's a relationship inside you. If you don't even think about it like that, you're just never going to notice when the will is ignoring the intellect, when the intellect is ignoring the will, and even though you don't know that's happening, you're going to feel the fallout. You're going to feel the fallout in your life. And we don't want that. We want you to feel whole and happy. So this is why it's important for us to look at and label and understand that there is a dynamic there in the first place. And this is like a very important part of what it means to be human. It's actually it's not just a fun incidental feature. It is at the core of what it is to be human in the first place. It actually, as they say, it goes all the way to the top. That we are this way because God is the way that God is. And the joining of the two, the joining of what you know and what you want, or what you know and what you do, what you're doing is just the expression of that. It's hard to find something that Jesus talks about more often. Famously, in John 14, I guess like everything Jesus says is pretty famous by now. He did okay for himself. If you love me, keep my commandments. So the joining of the commandments, which is the knowledge, and the love, which is the feeling that pushes you to want to do that, that's the whole point. Why say it like that? Why, if you love me, keep my commandments? Can't you, if you're really God, can't you just say, just keep the commandments? I don't care why you do it. Why does he care why we do it? If he just wants the commandments done, just go do them. Why does he care why we do it? Why does it matter to be doing it not just because you know that you should, but because you love? It's because doing that creates something that nothing else does, which is not just the commandments, whatever Jesus is telling you to do, whatever you feel like the truth is telling you to do. It's not just that those things get done. It's that now there's a joining. Now there's this joining together, which is, it's just like if you're a couple, yeah, there's like we need to work together on the yard. Sure, that's fine. But what's more important is that now you're together a little more. Now the actions bring you together. Same thing with like team building of any kind. It's not just what gets done, it's that the people are forming more bonds. There is love there now. This is symptom is a negative word, but this is an expression of something that is fundamental about how everything is, how reality is. New Church theology calls it the heavenly marriage. If you were to just step back and look at how everything works, and doesn't matter how closely or how scientifically you look at everything, it's always that different things are coming together to create something more than the two of them. If you start to just look at the world for that, I would even say, and look, I'm going to expose my ignorance of these things, but even when you look at the way that reality is structured, like matter and energy, particles and waves, there is these two different things that are kind of different, that blur the line between being different and being the same. And it's those two coming together that make anything able to be what it is. You live in a universe, but you don't even have to be in science class for that. You can just look at like a TV. I bought an antenna yesterday, so I got TVs on my mind, because you know how you can't watch the things that are on TV, like the World Cup and the football and you can't watch those anymore you have to buy this antenna. Anyway, TV and the electricity. Like it's the TV sitting there, can't do anything on its own. It just is a black rectangle. And there's this electricity in the wall that can't do anything on its own. It's just a little thing that can shock you if you touch it. But if you plug the TV into the electricity, the two come together to create Netflix or whatever. Things come together to create something that is more. Yes, that is the most inspiring example I could think of. But just look all across life. That's the way that it is. Right now, there's like a talker. I'm the talker, you're the listener. Right now, we can switch later, but that's creating something more than what we're doing. Up here, there's like the talker and then the music. And together, they come together to create an experience, which is more than either one could create alone. Everything is like that because everything is a reflection of its creator, who God is one, but yet is very much a one that comes out of a joining of love and wisdom. And I don't know if there's any better summation of that than this is from New Church Theology in the book Divine Love and Wisdom, number 29. It says, no one can deny that God possesses in him love and wisdom together in their very essence. Which just sounds like, okay, that's a bunch of philosophical something. I don't know what you're talking about. But you do know what this is talking about. For he loves all people out of the love in him, and he guides all out of the wisdom in him. If you're just going to think about just general picture of God, can you separate those two things? And I think of it like, if you want to know like general picture of God, think about movies that depict, like that aren't like religious movies, but that just have an almost incidental depiction of God in them. I'm thinking of, there's one that was Bruce Almighty. There's one that was where these people, regular people, pop up and they're like, "Hey, I'm just a really good friend." Like the main character meets God, but they don't know it's God, like God in human form in some way, but just something about the way this person is talking to them, and they're like, "Wow, that's really." And whenever I watch those, I get a little bit like goosebumps of like, "Oh yeah." That is, and the thing about those little cameo characters that makes you kind of believe they could be a representation about God is that they love and that they're wise. That they care about this person, but they also have a plan. That they also are saying, look, if you just do this, your life might change. And then a few scenes later, the person starts doing that, and it works. It is because if you just think of God from the perception that we all have of the truth of what's really out there, you think of someone who, they love you. They love everybody. You look out and you see somebody who's suffering and you think, oh yeah, God loves that person. But it's not just that. It's also that God is thinking of how to lead that person. That God is teaching. Try to turn that dial so that it's a God who just teaches but doesn't, and just teaches and leads but doesn't care about you. Starts to get icky. Go the other way. It's God who just loves and loves but isn't really thinking about what you're going through and where you're going to go. No, it's got to be right there at 5, where it's both those things together. That is, if you think about it, that's what is wonderful about the idea of God. And if you ever, if you have somebody who's had a near-death experience where they go and they like stand in the light, it's always that the light knows everything about them and loves them totally. And it's those two together that make it this magical, I know I'm meeting the creator of everything. Because the two are always there and they're always working together for the goal, which is outside and above just loving or just leading. It's like, I want to care for you and I'm caring for you at the same time. Okay? That's what's so important about those things being together. That's why we are meant to be like that, where our two parts of us, the will and the intellect, are in that kind of marriage. And again, I'm saying that's the way God is, and you don't have to just take my word or this PowerPoint slide's word for it. You can see it in the way that your own mind works. And in the next section, we're going to look at that, where people independently studying what makes people happy or not happy have happened upon, oh yeah, you've got to have your internal couple, your will and your understanding, getting along with each other, or else it's very, very hard to have a happy home in yourself.
Wish you could see me now. Wish I could show you how I'm not who I was. I used to be mad at you, a little on the hurt side too. I'm not who I was. I found my way around to forgiving you some time ago, but I never got to tell you so. Found us in a photograph, saw me and I had to laugh. You know, I'm not who I was. You were there, you were right above me. I wondered if you ever loved me just for who I was. When the pain came back again, like a bitter friend, it was all that I could do to keep myself from blaming you. Reckon it's a funny thing, found out I could sing, but I'm not who I was. I write about love and such, maybe because I want it so much. I'm not who I was. I was thinking maybe I should let you know that I am not the same, but I never did forget your name. Hello. The thing I find most amazing in Amazing Grace is the chance to give it out. Maybe that's what love is all about. I wish you could see me now. I wish I could show you how I'm not who I was.
That's great. again, you see this playing out over years and years. A person sees in the future, looks back and says, look, I've changed. I want you to see this. The getting along is this wonderful and complex and ongoing thing. And so it can be inside of us. And you don't have to think about getting your will and your intellect or getting your heart and your mind to be getting along well, to be reflecting that heavenly marriage. But if you don't, there's some real negative side effects that accumulate. And if you do, there's some really positive ones because it is the way it's meant to be. And you can start to see all these systems that depend on that. So a handy way to think about it is nuclear fusion versus nuclear fission. There's that whole thing about nuclear and nuclear, so I always get worried when I say that word. You can ask yourself as you go through your day, am I running my life on fission or fusion? We talk about like splitting the atom. The atomic power is like some of the strongest power, definitely that we have per unit. There's actually two ways to get atomic power. There is fission, which is the one you're all thinking about. That is where you split stuff apart. You have the basics of it are you have some kind of heavy element, and it's in an arrangement where you can pull it apart, and if you do so, there's a chain reaction, and then you get like the power plant where Homer Simpson works. You get atom bombs. That's all fission. That is the power gained by splitting things apart. And in yourself, you can get a kind of power from splitting apart your will and your intellect. You can, when it's convenient, just push one of them aside and go do something that gives you a little bit of energy, but there's these costs. And with fission, what are the costs of nuclear energy? Radioactive waste, and also the danger of a meltdown. But radioactive waste is like we have ways to deal with it, but it is dangerous for hundreds of thousands of years. I'm not trying to make a statement of whether nuclear power is good or bad. It can do some great things. I'm just saying fission compared to fusion, that there's hundreds of thousands of years where this will make this waste that you can't even touch, and if the cooling systems go offline, you can have a meltdown, and this is like Chernobyl, and so there's some real dangers to that. But there's another kind of nuclear power which is called fusion, and that is where you get a ton of energy not by pulling stuff apart, but by putting it together. It's where you combine some very light elements together, and their joining creates this power. And you know what? It actually creates more power. And instead of nuclear waste, you know what its byproducts are? Like helium. Things that are not dangerous at all. There's a little bit of neutrons that kind of make one little container. And the point is, it doesn't have this same danger to it. The only reason we're not doing it en masse is it's more difficult. Like, we don't have the technology quite there. But you know all about it because that's what the sun is. The sun is fusion. It is a bunch of atoms coming together. The whole universe is basically fusion. Fission only happens in these we made it up. It's not the way the universe runs. So I'm telling you, in your mind, say, I want to run my life on fusion rather than on fission. So here's an example, and I'll use some examples that hit a little bit too close to home of when you can get energy by splitting the will and the intellect, or when you can get energy by joining the will and the intellect. So first of all, I told you I'd come back to phone scrolling. Now, listen, sharing reels with your loved ones is hilarious, and it can be great. However, you can absolutely do too much of sitting there at night when you're supposed to be going to sleep and you're scrolling your phone. Or I'll just say, I do that. I can do that too much. And there's In me, there's a will which loves to do that, or at least like feels like it wants to keep doing that. And then there's an intellect which is saying, hey, remember yesterday? We said we weren't going to do this tonight because it makes it too hard to go to sleep, and you end up, by the time you scroll for that long, it's just reels that make you more miserable about life. Remember how we're not going to do that? A fission way of approaching that is like, yeah, the intellect is yapping about how we're not supposed to do it. Get out of the way. I'm scrolling because I feel like it. That is the will bullying the intellect and just saying, I don't care. And it's like not even that you have to listen, but I don't even care what you have to say. I'm going for it. And you get some energy. You do it because you love it and you feel sort of good during, but then afterwards, it's just empty, and now it is too late, and now you didn't do the other thing that you lose your energy from the fission. It can go, so that's like the will overriding the intellect. And it doesn't do, the intellect can see, like, this is how we would structure a good life together, but then the will doesn't do it. But then there's other ways it can go, where your will can sense something that your intellect then pushes away. Wanted to call it the justification cavalry. There can be time when you have an interaction with somebody, and you do something, say something, act in a way that you just feel like, oh, that's not good. You can just tell right away that I shouldn't have, that's not how I want people to treat me, that's not how I should have treated this person, and you feel like you want to make it right, but then your intellect can come in and say, they deserve that, I was just being honest, justification, and it doesn't listen to what the will was trying to say. Now, I'm not saying it's always going to be an easy choice or you're always going to know, but you need to have the two in dialogue. What am I sensing about that? Like, we want to have open communication. What do I feel? What do I think? And how can these two things make a decision together? Because the meeting point when you do have both of those things work together is actually a very well-defined, clinically verified engine for human well-being. Go to the next one, because I have a little tag I put on it. It's clinically verified. This is something that people who'd never heard of New Church theology, who aren't looking at Jesus' teachings, just look at the way that human beings function when they have this marriage going well versus when they don't. So this is not an exhaustive search, but there are definitely a lot of fields where they've put different terms on this phenomenon in people. One of them is called self-concordance. So if you have goals that spring both from your interests, which is your will, like what do you want, and your core values, which is what I would call your intellect, like what do I really believe? If you have goals that spring from both of those are the best goals. And here's why. One is you pursue them more. Everybody knows what it's like to have a goal, but then you don't really do it. But also, you reap more well-being when you reach those goals because they were coming from both your heart and your mind. They verified this, they did studies, they found out when you have those two together, you'll have goals you actually get done, and when you get them done, they affect you more positively than if you just had it because it was just a blind want or just an intellectually should sort of goal. Second, in self-determination theory, which we'll unpack a little more in the next slide, there is something called integration. So the very same action can produce more well-being the more unified the motivation is behind it. And there's 4 categories: external, introjected, identified, or integrated, which again, we'll explain in a second. But the basic story is the things you do every day, how much your will and intellect are married in those things changes how they affect you. So you can get like plus 20% benefit, well-being benefit from everything you do if it's got these two things together. Also, flow state. Have you ever heard of flow state? This is where when you watch basketball, normally somebody scores 20 points a game, but then suddenly they score 60 points. that night, and nobody can stop them, and they're hitting everything that they shouldn't usually hit. And you ask them, you interview them after the game, what was going on, and they just say, I was in the zone. This is something that was identified in the mid 70s, but then really in the 90s, they started talking about how there's this distinct state in which what you want to do and what you know how to do get together, and then you get this amazing performance across all kinds of art, innovation, sports. The flow state is this harmony of the will and intellect. All these things are secular cascading effects of the fact that there's this divine marriage at the heart of reality. So the more we participate in it, the happier we can become. So self-determination theory, think about the difference between being someone who is like, oh, I have to run today. Let's say you want to be a jogger and you want to exercise. You say, I have to run today, versus you're like, I'm a runner, so what's my run today? There's these 4 different reasons why you can be doing something, and these, I would say, represent different tiers of how much the will and the intellect are joined to each other. There's something called external reason for doing something. So that is, I'm going to go and run because my drill instructor is telling me I have to. Let's say I'm at boot camp and they say, you have to do this or I'm going to yell at you or make you do push-ups and you'll be embarrassed. And so you go and do it. And there's some benefits to that. It's good to, it can be good for you, but you're getting minimal psychological benefit because it's purely external. How engaged is your will in this? Not really for the goal. Maybe you want to avoid pain, but how much is your intellect engaged? Not really. You don't really believe in it. Core values aren't there. So you can go do it, but it's not that great. It won't do that much for you. But then there's introjected motivations, which is where nobody's telling you to do it, but there you are and you're out and you're running anyway. But it's only a bit because your own will and intellect are converging on this. It's because you can hear that same voice in your head. There's some kind of guilt or shame. People won't be happy unless you do it. So it's self-motivated, but just barely. The will is just a little motivated. The intellect is just a little motivated. But then there's getting to be identified. Identified is when you understand why. I've seen some research on how regular cardiovascular 40 or 120 minutes a week or whatever it is, I can see why that would have cascading. I get that, and I want that for my life, kind of, but I know it's the right thing to do. I don't really want to be on this run, but I know it's the right thing to do. That's when your intellect is leading you in, and your will is like sort of there. And that will give you a lot better, not just the benefits of the exercise, but the benefits of a sense of well-being, a sense of identity that's starting to ramp up. But the best one is called integrated. And that is where you don't think, I should exercise right now. You think, I'm a runner, I'm a person who's in shape. What's my training today? This is when what you love and what you know are not in conflict. And you don't necessarily start there, but you can get there. And you get there through repeated action and through looking to really unify these things on it. A little bit more about what flow state is like, which I think is the coolest instance of like people being in a state of heaven that people discovered through a totally non-religious route. But it is where, and they have these like 9 characteristics of what flow state is, and I won't go into all of them, but some keys to it is it's like you don't have your inner critic going. You don't have your monkey mind going where you're second guessing, like, should I do this? Should I not do that? Am I looking good doing this? You're just doing it. So let's say you're at work and you're like building something and you're just absorbed in the work and you know the next thing to do. You derive intrinsic pleasure from the activity itself. This is always in flow state. You love not just, oh, this is going to get me something later, but doing this thing itself is its own reward. Also, your sense of time slows down, and you always know the next thing to do. And people, even if you talk to people who are suddenly placed in situations where somebody needs help right now. I once heard this podcast about there's somebody who saw someone getting charged by like a bull in a fenced-in area, and they just knew exactly how to run in and save that person. You just get taken over by this, not just you want to do it, but you know how to do it. Those two things converge in this like very mystical way for people in these flow states, that a lot of the stuff that we enjoy, a lot of the music you love, a lot of the writing you love to read was conceived, if you go talk to the authors and the musicians, in these kinds of flow states. That's like the ultimate peak of the will and intellect together, but your entire life can be a bit of flow if you work on how do I have it so that my beliefs and my knowledge gets its say, my will and my interest get their say, and they come together to look and say, well, what is a good life? And how should we best honor what we both want and know? How do I best express these both in use? That is when you get, not just things get done, but you get this holistic sense of well-being and joy. That's when you've got the ultimate power couple inside yourself. So that's what I hope you can take with you when you think about Jesus saying, with all your heart and with all your mind. When you think about the building the house on the rock versus building the house on the sand. When you think about flow states and psychology and all these findings about how an integrated person is a happy person, just picture like my life is a constant, it's kind of like a date all the time. We're out, we're eating dinner together. Are we getting along? Is the will getting along with the intellect? And how can I nurture that relationship? How can I build up those communication skills? How can I make it so that I am just like God is looking at each of us with love and wisdom? How am I looking at everything in my life with love and with wisdom? And how can I bring that energy into my day today? Okay? So I want to take a minute now to kind of seal that over by saying the Lord's Prayer, which you can hear this two-part rhythm in it. Even as I read it, I don't know how to read it any other way, which is like, to me, that feels like the heavenly marriage right there. As in heaven, so upon the earth. Daily, forgive us our debts, and also forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. There seems to be, again, this mark of the divine. Is like there's these two sides to it that come together to create something more than what they are. So as we're reading through it today, try to notice that. Notice the marriage in each line of that, and then use that, again, to remind yourself of, we got to join this thing together in myself so that I can go and join with other people I love and with the rest of the human race. So here's how it goes. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Thanks, everyone. I hope that you go out with a strong heart, a strong mind, and a strong relationship between the two, so that that same happiness that God wants to bestow on us through his leading and his love is able to flow into you, make you feel good and whole and integrated, and then flow through you out to the next person. Because it's the same kind of joining. When you do something good for them, it's the same kind of thing. That's the same connection that you're trying to make inside yourself. So yeah, thank you for spending a little time connecting here with me, and let's go out and have a great, unified, happily joined week.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I seen them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, and clouds of white, bright blessed days, dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The color of the rainbows, so pretty in the sky, and also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? Well, they're really saying that I love you. I hear babies cry, I watched them grow. They'll learn much more than I will ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I